Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I've got something new for you guys today. It's still Valentine's theme, but I'm adding some wood crafts to my tutorials, and I'm going to be starting with this really pretty Valentine's Day door hanger. So you're going to be able to grab this free template from my blog at svgnation.com, and there is a link in the video description that's going to take you directly there, as well as links to the supplies that I'm using in case you want to check any of those out. So once you've got that downloaded, go ahead and add that to your canvas. And so I am using a 16 by 16 inch wood round. So if you're using that same size, this is ready to go. You don't need to make any modifications to it. But if you're using a different size, I'm going to show you how you can modify this. So I'm just going to minimize that so I don't have all these layers showing here. And go ahead and click on your shapes tool and select your circle. And then depending on what size your wood round is, go ahead and change that circle to that size. So if you have a 12 by 12 inch, we'll make it this size. And I'm just going to send this to the back. And I'm just going to click right here on this group, and I'm just going to resize this until it seems like a good size that's going to fit on there. So you do want it a little bit smaller. You don't want anything hanging off. And this top is meant to be empty for your bow to go there. So you can kind of just drag it until you feel like it looks like it's a good size. And so that's how easy it is to kind of resize this. Now I'm going to go back and add the original in here real quick, just because this is the size that I need. All right, really quick, I want to show you what material I'm using for each of these. And we are using our standard mat to cut this on. Okay, so for this black right here, I'm actually using iron on vinyl. So I do need to mirror this. And also you're going to notice that this is larger than a 12-inch mat. So you are going to need the longer mat if you're making it this size. Now if you have a 12 by 12 circle, you're probably going to be able to use your regular 12 by 12 mat. Shouldn't be an issue, but for anything larger than that, you do need the larger mat. And so this is also going to be iron on vinyl, so I'm going to go ahead and mirror this. Now this layer right here, this is going to be used as a stencil, so it's not actually part of your design. So I'm going to actually use a stencil vinyl, but if you don't have that, you can use any kind of adhesive vinyl. And like I said, it's just for a stencil, so the color doesn't matter. You're going to be painting on top of these, and then you're peeling the hearts off to leave that white background underneath it. So whatever kind of adhesive vinyl you have that maybe you don't use much, you can just use that. So let's go ahead and cut everything out so that I can show you how to assemble everything. When you cut your iron on vinyl, you want to make sure that the shiny side of your vinyl is facing down on your mat. And as I mentioned before, you need to make sure that you mirror this layer in Cricut Design Space before cutting. But with the stencil vinyl or adhesive vinyl, you do not need to mirror this, and the shiny side or the front of the stencil will face up. So it's the complete opposite of iron on vinyl. And there is a stencil setting in Cricut Design Space, and that's the setting that I'm using to cut this stencil. So I've got all my pieces cut out. For the iron on vinyl pieces, I went ahead and just put those aside. I'm going to weed those later while I'm waiting for the paint from this to dry. And so I'm going to go ahead and just weed this stencil vinyl. So all I'm doing is pulling off this top piece. You want the hearts left on your bottom piece, and I'm just pulling this off. Now, if you wanted to make this a little bit different, you could actually use this as a stencil if you just want to paint the hearts on. But I want the hearts to be white behind it, so I'm going to use this part. So there is the option to do this either way, but I'm just going to get rid of this piece because it's not needed. If you're doing this the way that I am, you are going to need transfer tape. Apply this transfer tape right on top, making sure that all of those hearts get placed on the tape. And kind of lift that up, pull it down flat. Oh, there's a little bubble right here. Okay. And once you have that transfer tape on, go ahead and flip that over. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure what happened to my scraper, so I'm just going to use my brayer just to kind of push those down to attach to the transfer tape. But you can also use your scraper. I had mine a minute ago and I just don't remember where I set it. So we're just going to make sure that kind of presses on to transfer over, and then you can just peel this off. And it does help if you kind of like pull this back, and if you kind of see one of them's not pulling off, just kind of push it down and it'll help it back off. Just give it a little push down and it will help it roll right off. Just push that down. kind of takes a certain technique to work with transfer paper sometimes. It's just kind of all about how you roll and peel this back. Okay. So now we want to grab our board. So I have my board right here. So this board actually started off looking like this. So it was already sanded and finished when I ordered it. So what I did is I just went ahead and I painted 2 coats of this white. It's a satin acrylic paint that's for indoor outdoor use because I am gonna hang this outside. So I did 2 coats on this. Of course, I could have probably done a 3rd coat, but I was okay with this. I didn't paint the back. That's totally optional if you guys want to paint the back of yours, but mine will be hanging against a wall so you won't see it. All right, so now I'm gonna line these up. And they just kind of go down here towards the bottom. Like I would line it up going with the bottom first and just kind of place them, you know, where they look center and pretty even. Okay, so I found where I set my scraper tool down, so that's great. That's gonna help. It probably would have transferred over on the transfer paper better if I had had this. So I'm just gonna scrape down each one of these pieces and make sure that it sticks really well to this. Now stencil vinyl doesn't necessarily stick very well to like the wood, but since this is painted, it's gonna stick a little better. So if you aren't painting this and you're having issues with the stencil vinyl and the wood, then you may wanna try to use adhesive vinyl instead. Okay, and once you have those pressed down really well, you can go ahead and lift that transfer tape up. And those should stay down pretty well for you. If they don't, then use that scraper to push them down some more. So now you're just gonna take either like a painter's tape or a masking tape, and you're gonna apply this right above it. You do want a little bit of a gap, and you want this line to be straight, at least as straight as you can get it. You can always measure and mark if it's gonna drive you crazy if it's not perfectly straight, but I'm just gonna go with this. And I'll just kind of fold this under. And I don't want the paint to seep through, so I'm just going to press this down really well and make sure that it is on here really well, along with all of these little hearts. If some of the paint does seep through, of course, you can clean it up with your white paint, but I'm going to try to prevent that from happening. So I'm just making sure these are pressed down really well. A brayer tool, you know, can help with pressing this down as well if you've misplaced your scraper or don't have one. Alright, so now that all of that is pressed down really well, I'm going to go ahead and paint this bottom part. So to paint this, I'm just using another acrylic indoor-outdoor paint. This one's actually going to be a gloss finish. The finish that you use really doesn't matter. I'm actually using the 2 paints that I'm using because I have those on hand, although I did want them to be like a indoor-outdoor because like I said, this is going to be going outside. So I'm just using a regular paintbrush to just paint this whole section. And I'm also going to go around the edges. So I did add like a plastic bag underneath just because I don't want to get paint on my workspace. And this pack of these wood rounds that I ordered, they did come in a pack of 6. So I have 5 more of these, you know, to do something with. So if you guys have any recommendations on different holidays or different ideas that I should do with them, then go ahead and let me know in the comments. Because I'm happy to see what you guys want to do. I do have some ideas in mind, but sometimes you guys come up with really great ideas. So I'd love to hear those. And I'm going to paint 2 coats of this. So I'm going to paint this first coat and I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to do a second coat. And then once I'm done with that second coat, I'll go ahead and come back and show you how to peel the stuff off before we continue to move on. Alright, so I painted 2 coats and I let it dry a bit. So now I'm going to remove this tape. I'm just going to go kind of slowly. And that line looks perfect. If you do end up having a little bit of paint seep through, you can just touch that up with your white paint. But that looks great. That worked really well. Alright, so now I'm just going to use this little pick to help me with removing these hearts. Just want to kind of lift up under it and lift those off. Oh, those look great too. I love when it turns out the way it's supposed to. Alright, so after peeling a bunch of these hearts off, I found the easiest way is to actually get up under this point right here and just peel. So that actually made it really easy, and it went pretty quick to get all of that off. So now I'm just going to set this aside just to kind of let it dry a little bit more while I weed the iron-on vinyl. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and weed this iron-on vinyl. And I have a hard time getting these going in the corners, so what I usually do is I just kind of stick my little weeding tool right in here in one of the edges to get that started. It might not be the best way, but that's the way that works best for me. And I'm just going to pull all this extra off. And when you're weeding this, don't forget to get inside those letters as well and get those pieces out. Alright, so I only want to do one heat press of this, so I'm going to need to cut these really close around, and I'm cutting these in the groups that they're grouped in Cricut Design Space. So we have that group of 2, and then we have those 2 groups of 3. And then I'm going to cut really close around them. That way I can heat press the hearts with the Hello Valentine, because you don't want anything overlapping when you do that. So this way I can press those together. So I also want to cut the material around this as well. You don't really need to cut that much around Valentine, but this hello part, you do need to go ahead and cut and go like on the inside, since some of the hearts go on the inside there. And if you don't want to use iron-on vinyl, you can also make this project using permanent adhesive vinyl. So I prefer using iron-on vinyl with wood. It attaches really well. It lasts a little bit longer, but it also gives you that look of being painted on versus like a sticker on it. So those are just the reasons why I like to use it, but it's just a personal preference, or sometimes based off the materials you have on hand, what you may use. So now I'm just going to place my iron-on vinyl in place, lining this up just above that pink part. And then I'm just going to press that down. Then I'm going to add the hearts in. So let's see. I'm just going to look at the picture to make sure I get them in the right place, which you can do as well. So these are just going right along the outside here. And if any of this is overlapping or in the way, just trim it a little more. It's okay if the clears overlap, but you don't want, the clear overlapping under either of the designs. So the 2 hearts right here kind of go right there. Let's try to press that down as the best we can so it doesn't pop up. And then the 4 hearts go over here. So see, I'm going to have to trim this just a little bit more. Alright, so I'm just going to add these hearts on now that I've trimmed it up. And then you want to go ahead and get your heat press ready. So I've added parchment paper on top of the design that I'm pressing, since I am pressing on wood. And I am using the heat settings from the Cricut guide. And so I'm gonna have to do this in 2 presses since it's a little bit larger, but we're just doing this for 40 seconds on the 300 degree. So I'm just gonna let that press. Alright, so now I'm just gonna slide this over, and I'm just gonna press this part right here that didn't get pressed for 40 seconds as well. Alright, so after you press that, you're gonna wanna let it cool until it's like cool to the touch, and then you can go ahead and peel it. So I'm just gonna. And while you're peeling it, if you notice that any of it is not pressed down well, then go ahead and add this paper back and add your parchment paper back and press that longer. With adding the parchment paper there, you may have to press it a little bit longer, but mine seems to have pressed pretty well. I do recommend using the parchment paper though if you painted on this. And there we go, it's all attached. So a lot of people don't know that you can actually use iron-on vinyl with wood, but it works really well, and it gives it a flatter, smoother, kind of painted on look, so I really like to use it. Alright, so the last part is to add your bow. And to make this bow, I'm using a 2.5 inch wired ribbon. And you're also going to need some type of wire to hold it together. And I didn't really have anything on hand, so I'm actually using like the little wire from the bread. So whatever you have will work. Okay, so this is a pretty simple bow. So I'm going to start, move this over here. Okay. So I'm going to start by making a loop here, but I do want to leave a little bit hanging off the edge when I make this loop. So this is the part that kind of comes out from behind the bow. Let's see. So when you make your loop, you're just going to kind of press it in just like this. So you can already kind of see like a bow shape happening. So press that in pretty well. Remember, we've got this little piece hanging at the bottom right here. And then we're going to make another loop. I have to move that around. And we're going to make it the same size on the other side. Let's see. And once we have that about the same size, we're just going to, again, press this down. So those look pretty equal. And we'll be able to kind of fluff this up at the end, so don't worry about fluffing it up too much. So now we're making another bow here. And again, we want to make that about that same size. And then we're just pressing it in the middle, just like we did before. And then we want to make one last loop here. You may have to twist it a little bit to get that design to show up front. Once you have that loop made, just press it in the middle, just to hold it really well together. Okay. And now before you cut the ribbon, go ahead and, as you kind of twist in the middle, you may have to kind of twist it around so that those are facing the same way as you're putting it in. Go ahead and measure and cut that about the same length there. I am going to trim those up, so it's not going to be perfect. And now you want to take your wire and you're going to use the wire to hold this middle part together. You want to pull it as tight as you can. And wrap. And like probably like floral wire is probably ideal, but I didn't want to have to run out, so I had this, so I'm just using this. And now once you have that closed together, you can go ahead and fluff your bow up. So I'm using hot glue, and I'm just going to place a decent amount to the back here. Now I'm just going to line that up top and press that down. And now I'm just going to trim these up. I'm going to make this part pretty short, and I'm also going to cut it at a diagonal. Go ahead and fluff your bow pieces. Just kind of, I like to make them a little thicker, have them a little fluffier, and that's all there is to it. You just gotta take some string, place it through the holes, and then you can hang this pretty little sign outside. And then once you have that through there, you can go ahead and tie a knot in this. And I'm gonna actually double knot this. And then you should be able to pull this and that's not gonna come through there. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and cut some of this off. I'm gonna make it longer than I need. That way I know I have enough. I'm just gonna tie this. And I'm just gonna bring this through the other hole this way. And I'm just gonna pull it and kind of figure out what length that I want. And like I mentioned, I made it kind of long to make sure I had enough. Pull a little less than that just because I know I need a little extra to make this knot. I'm gonna make that another double knot here. Now I'm gonna be able to pull that up and it's not gonna come through. And I am just gonna wanna trim those pieces off. I need to fluff that up a little more. And there we go. It's all ready to hang. If you guys have any questions, leave those in the comments and I will answer them there. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.